what are the fruits of these kinds of ideologies? Well, I can actually tell you because I'm from the area of the world that is bathed in feminism. And the fruits of feminism are this: a world with no children. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Rachel Patterson. This is a channel called Women in Priesthood. It's designed for men and women of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to study priesthood power. I'm really proud of the fact that pretty consistently my viewership is made of 50% men and women. I just got back from a really great conference. I went to the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference in Utah. I didn't know what I was going to expect. They asked me to present there, and it was so fun. It was really faith promoting and inspiring, and I was able to present two topics on Thursday and Friday. And the second topic was such a hit. That's the class I'm going to do today. That everybody, multiple people, had just amazing insights and comments, and I realized that this was a topic that was super relevant to people, and multiple people asked me to re-record it with the slides, and so that's what I'm doing today. If you would do me a favor and like and subscribe. If you subscribe, it helps. What it will do is it will promote this channel to other people. So if you want other people to hear this message, which I think is going to resonate with a lot of people who are concerned about this topic of feminism, its effects on the LDS culture, the LDS church, and fertility rates, I think so. Subscribe below, and it'll promote this video to more LDS people, LDS women, LDS men who are of a more faithful persuasion. My background with this issue is kind of unique. I studied in my master's degree at Dartmouth, and I researched population growth in the Middle East. I studied fertility rates and the way that population growth can ebb and flow, the things that affect it for better or for worse. And I noticed in the last couple of years interesting trends happening in the LDS community with fertility. Population growth, population decline, etc. But one of the things that I don't think people appreciate is one of the drivers or diminishers the effects of feminism in our culture. What is feminism? What are the actual core beliefs of feminism? I grew up in New England, which is the heart of the feminist movement, and I grew up in Vermont, and so I kind of grew up marinating in that. I mean, that's where the women's suffragette movement started. That's where feminism is really, really part of the culture. So I grew up learning feminism as a real mindset, and also having the gospel of Jesus Christ taught to me. And I'm going to show you the core beliefs of feminism. I'm also going to show how they compare and contrast with the doctrines of the gospel of Jesus Christ in the restored gospel of Jesus Christ in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm also going to show you the way that that's affecting our population growth in the LDS church and in the country. I think sometimes we can hear like an idea that sounds really good, but we don't necessarily know. Maybe we'll hear a rumor that sounds really good or interesting, but we don't necessarily know the source of the rumor. And when we find, we might have heard it from like the 10th person who was telling us this idea. When we find out who actually started the rumor or who started the idea, that allows us to evaluate if this is a rumor we want to buy into, if it's an idea we want to buy into. So what I want to do is show you the people who designed the feminist ideas, who are the original creators of feminism, and the way that those ideas still permeate our culture and are very much driving the United States fertility rates and LDS fertility rates. Major trends that you're seeing in the United States and globally are falling fertility rates. I love this article right here by The Economist. If you can see, the cover of this article shows a young man with a rose being rejected by this empowered Asian woman. And what you're seeing in most of the globe, and you're starting to see in the United States, are young men interested in getting married and young women turning away from marriage, and especially motherhood. More and more women are saying they don't want to be mothers. And when you look at the feminist paradigm says that family life is particularly oppressive to women because they have to take care of children, and it's unvalued labor, it's oppressive. So those paradigms do motivate behavior, and they're finding more and more women are turning away from marriage, which is leaving a serious gap of young men who will never be married as well, and they will also be fatherless. And then finally, this is definitely a big hot topic this election. Over here, the New York Magazine shows that single women will comprise the most powerful voting bloc in this election. We've never seen such a large voting bloc of single women. It's an unprecedented proportion of our population that are women who do not have children. And then I know the question you guys are all asking is, if we have, as the LDS community, if we have a value of, strengthening home and family that we've taught to our young women, and then our young women, our Relief Society Declaration says that we find nobility in motherhood and joy in womanhood. Where do we stack up? Where do we stack up in the LDS community? And what we're finding is that we are above the average. We are barely growing. We are at about 2.8 children per household, and the average is 2. The average is lower than that, though. The average is lower. This is according to the Pew Research Institute. What they're finding is that in our community, when you eliminate the boomers, we have a birth rate of barely growing. We are growing, but we are barely growing. The average boomer family had like 5 kids, 6 kids, and the average family now in the LDS community is 3. In the church, in the LDS church, we believe a couple core things. Young women are raised to believe that family, taking care of home and family, is a really important priority. In fact, when I was a teenager, they changed the young women theme a couple times, and every single iteration emphasized more and more home and family. It was like in high school, they changed the last paragraph of the young women's theme to say, "With faith, I will strengthen my home and family, making keepsake covenants and receive the ordinances and blessings of the temple." I remember thinking this was this isn't a big deal. Like, why is this significant? And I think it was the same as when a lot of us heard the family proclamation announced. We just were, this doesn't seem interesting or unique at all. This is, what's the big deal? Later on, we would find out how important it is that we're raising our girls to believe in the family proclamation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, another interesting thing is in the Women's Declaration, the Relief Society Declaration, it says that we find nobility in motherhood and joy in womanhood. Nobility in motherhood. I think that's such an interesting phrase, because so much of there's a girl in Scripture Central who does a really good breakdown on the temple, and it's basically, her argument is that the temple covenant ceremonies are a coronation, and that aspiring to be mothers makes you a queen, aspiring to fathers makes you a king, and that's the paradigm and the framework we believe in. One thing that people don't know about is a prophecy of the last days that I'm going to spend more time on this prophecy of Joseph Smith's of the last days that is particularly relevant right now, and we are really, really seeing this. We are really seeing this happen in our life in this exact moment. Okay, so Joseph Smith said, and this is from a Truman G. Madsen speech at BYU Speeches, and he said that the time would come when none but the women of the Latter-day Saints would be willing to bear children. There's a couple interesting things in this quote. I think it's interesting that he says that the women of the Latter-day Saints would be the only ones willing, because he emphasizes the idea that it would be a choice, that women of the he said, the time would come when none but the women of the Latter-day Saints would be willing. We would be the only women who would choose proactively to become mothers. And then he said, bear children. So that was an interesting phrase in terms of actually having a pregnancy, laboring children into life. That also has interesting things to investigate. Okay, so now we looked at that paradigm of the value of our church on home and family and having children, a prophecy that we may see fulfilled right now about women of the church having children, and that standing in direct contrast with women and I think this particularly relates to the United States, this prophecy, how that's going to compare and contrast to the rest of the United States. Now, what are the core ideas of feminism? The early feminist thought leaders, Karl Marx being one of them, in his book, The Abolition of the in the Communist Manifesto, he called for the abolition of the family. That's a direct quote. Isn't that interesting? That one of Marx's primary objectives when he started researching and coming up with the idea and the philosophies behind the arguments for feminism, his objective was the abolition of the family. That is a direct quote. Okay, Frederick Engels was a contemporary of his as well. And Frederick Engels and Marx would collaborate extensively, and they would write about feminist theory. They developed the foundations of feminism and feminist theory. And in his critique of the nuclear family, Engels wrote a paper on the origin of the family, private property, and the state. And his entire argument was that the modern individual family is founded on the open or concealed domestic slavery of the wife. So these original ideas that family life puts women in a slavery, servitude-based oppression, that family life is oppressive to women. Have you ever wondered where that idea came from? It comes from feminism. These are early deliberate ideas that are at the heart of feminism, feminist theory. Every version of it is that women are in an oppressive state in a family structure. Understandably, both Marx and Engels thought that that the family should be abolished and deconstructed because it was oppressive to women specifically. So the criticism we can obviously argue for abolishing the family and for these arguments are that they frame the family as an oppressive unit, and this overlooks the personal fulfillment and meaning that individuals derive from parent and child roles. Okay. The other thing that Marx argued is that the reason that the family was oppressive is that it was a exploitative commercial unit. It was meant to exploit the free labor of women and would extract labor in an oppressive way. This is a book that was written recently called, this is Modern Feminist. This is a modern feminist critique, in case you're wondering, like, oh, those are old ideas. Feminism still believes these things. This is a modern feminist critique essay that's written on Marx and Engels' books or original ideas, recently written in the last few years by Sophie Lewis, called A Manifesto for Care and Liberation, Abolish the Family. And this is her byline in her book. What if we could do better than the family? We need to talk about the family. For those who are lucky, families can be filled with love and care, but for many, they are sites of pain. From abandonment and neglect to abuse and violence, nobody is more likely to harm you than your family. And then they kind of go on to say that even in so-called happy families, the unpaid, unacknowledged work that it takes to raise children and care for each other is endless and exhausting. It could be otherwise. In this urgent, incisive polemic, leading feminist critique Sophie Lewis to make a case for family abolition. Okay, these are the core founding ideologies and beliefs of feminism. And that stands in direct contrast to what we believe in the restored gospel of Jesus Christ about the meaningfulness of family, the value emotionally and psychologically and relationally that family life can hold. And it really does dismiss the intrinsic value of the parent-child relationship. I think it's really powerful that we have been teaching our young women, my generation included, since we were young, to believe in the value of family life, the value of relationships. And that's something that I think was prophetically inspired by the General Young Women's Presidency since the late 80s. I think they have done an incredible job. I have an incredible testimony of prophecy when it comes to the way that Latter-day prophets prepared this generation of young women, and Latter-day General Young Women's presidents prepared this generation of young women to be resilient to some of these messages, somewhat resilient. Okay, so obviously a major critique that we would have of the dissolution of the family is that it is going to disrupt intimate bonds between men and women and children. And there's obviously some risks to society. So that's early 1884. Those were the original founding ideologies of feminism. But in the 1970s, it continued to evolve. And this is super interesting. Shulamith Firestone was a feminist of the 1970s, and this was a direct call to action that has continued to be expressed in our lives right now. Her quote is, "The end goal of the feminist revolution must be not just the elimination of male privilege, but of sex distinction itself. Sex distinction should no longer matter culturally." Isn't that interesting? The erasure of the differences between men and women in terms of their actual roles and in their actual physical genders, which we are seeing manifested in our culture everywhere right now, was originally conceived by the feminist movement. This is just an extension of the feminist movement. It's the newest iteration of eliminating and abolishing the family. So, I think it's really tough sometimes when you hear good ideas and it's hard to know what the fruits of an idea are. So I remember it was right after I was married, I got involved in like a really cool yoga community. I wanted to make friends. I didn't have any kids yet. It's hard to meet people sometimes when you're married but you don't have children. And so I got involved in this yoga community, and we went on a couple of retreats, and I got really fit. It was great. But I noticed when I went on one of these retreats that every single woman on this 50-woman retreat, we were in Mexico, it was great, except one other girl who was my age, I'm not kidding, literally every single woman had been divorced. And I was like, I love these ideas, but why are these ideas manifesting this kind of fruit? Like, why is it having this kind of a result? And then I pivoted, and I was looking at the church, the LDS church, and I was like, what? The LDS church has such a high rate of success in marriage. And I know people will be negative about that. The Pew Research Institute has actually done studies on different religions, and in the United States, of all of religious people have a higher rate of marital success than non-religious people, and of all religions, we are 10% more successful than every other religion in terms of marriage success. So say what you want to say, we are very successful at marriages compared to every other group of people in the United States. So the question that I have for you, when we look at these ideas, Marx, Engels, Shulamith Firestone, and they're saying let's eradicate the family, let's eliminate gender. What are the fruits of these kinds of ideologies? Well, I can actually tell you, because I'm from the area of the world that is bathed in feminism. And the fruits of feminism are this: a world with no children. If you look at this map, this is a map of fertility. Move myself out of the way. And as you can see here, there's two areas of the United States that have virtually negative, have been in virtually negative fertility growth for about a decade or more. And that's New England. That's where I'm from. Vermont, which is the state that my parents are born from, actually boasts the lowest fertility rate in the nation. And the other surrounding states, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, all also boast the lowest fertility rates in the United States. What that looks like on the ground when you actually go there is a world without children. It is the most apocalyptic thing. When you go there, we went there for a wedding a couple years ago, and my husband was so unnerved by it. I guess I was kind of used to it because I grew up there. Like, I grew up being like the weird Mormon family with 5 kids. But my husband was like, there are no kids here. He grew up in the South, where there's a lot of religious Protestants and evangelicals, and they have kids. So we played a game the 2 weeks that we were there. We were like, let's see how many kids we can find. And the 2 weeks that we were there, we saw one child with her grandparents, visiting her grandparents, and then we saw one family with 3 kids, and they were Indian. So in this state, you have all of these, like, I've seen TV shows where there's all these families moving into these homes and making second home cabins for their weekends. And I say to my husband, I'm like, those used to be homes where families used to live. And now we're like a cottage industry for New York gay couples who want a second home. This is what a feminist utopia looks like. A feminist utopia is a world with no children. I have lived this. And so one of the things that I feel is important for me to kind of let people know is, as a Latter-day Saint, having lived in a feminist world, in a feminist utopia, these are the fruits of feminism. Incredible decreases in population growth and basically an effective elimination of the family. The major trends that you're seeing in the United States and globally are falling fertility rates. I love this article right here by The Economist. If you can see, the cover of this article shows a young man with a rose being rejected by this empowered Asian woman. And what you're seeing in most of the globe, and you're starting to see in the United States, are young men interested in getting married and young women turning away from marriage, and especially motherhood. More and more women are saying they don't want to be mothers. And when you look at the feminist paradigm says that family life is particularly oppressive to women because they have to take care of children and it's unvalued labor, it's oppressive. So those paradigms do motivate behavior, and they're finding more and more women are turning away from marriage, which is leaving a serious gap of young men who will never be married as well, and they will also be fatherless. And then finally, this is definitely a big hot topic this election. Over here, the New York Magazine shows that single women will comprise the most powerful voting bloc. In this election, we've never seen such a large voting bloc of single women. It's an unprecedented proportion of our population that are women who do not have children. And then I know the question you guys are all asking is, if we have, as the LDS community, if we have a value of, strengthening home and family that we've taught to our young women, and then our young women, our Relief Society declaration says that we find nobility in motherhood, and joy in womanhood. Where do we stack up? Where do we stack up in the LDS community? And what we're finding is that we are above the average. We are barely growing. We are at about 2.8 children per household, and the average is 2. The average is lower than that, though. The average is lower. This is according to the Pew Research Institute. What they're finding is that in our community, when you eliminate the boomers, we have a birth rate of barely growing. We are growing, but we are barely growing. The average boomer family had like 5 kids, 6 kids, and the average family. And I think that you can argue that feminism is often kind of Trojan horsed into our culture, in the LDS culture, more and more. And I want you guys to have clarity, and we're going to talk about it more and more. I want you guys to have clarity about what the fruits of feminism actually are. When we talk about these ideas, sometimes people will promote feminism like, oh, it's just equal rights. You can believe in equal rights. Great. Our religion believes that men and women are made equally. Awesome. But where we differ is that we are pro-family, and we believe in marriage. We believe in having children. We believe in posterity. I think that, one of the questions I ask in my channel a lot is, what do priesthood covenants and priesthood protection afford us? And think about what the last thing in the temple that you say is. What is the last thing that you say out loud in the temple? I believe that the desire for children is a blessing that is afforded to us as a result of keeping our temple covenants and being people of the priesthood. When you're a man in the priesthood and you're a woman in the priesthood, you commit to God to fulfill the Abrahamic covenant, and you desire posterity, and you desire the protection of that posterity. And maybe in the time of Abraham and Sarah, what they were worried about in terms of the protection of their posterity was being killed by an invading tribe or being killed by a sandstorm. But for us, protecting our posterity might mean protecting our children and our young women from ideas, insidious ideas that will teach them to turn away from family life, to turn away from marriage, to delay the prioritization of making a family. So those are some of the things that I've discovered having studied population growth and things like that. If you found this interesting, please subscribe. It will help other people find my channel. It's right down there. Go ahead and subscribe. And I love some of your comments. Please chime in, especially if you saw me this weekend. I had such a nice time meeting so many of you and getting your comments. And yeah, stay tuned. We're going to talk about this some more. Bye.